Hello and welcome to another episode of the Security Repo podcast. Anyone that works in security and with developers will know that there can be a lot of friction between those two teams. And if you're a developer trying to focus on security, you'll also often find that the tools are not friendly for your workflow and how you operate. But things are starting to change, and we hear a lot about DevSecOps and shifting left. But often these just come down to slogans which look nice in presentations but hard to actually implement. And today we're going to be talking about contextual security analysis and how this can actually help maybe bridge that gap and start solving the security issues specifically for developers. We're joined today by James Wickett, who is the CEO and co-founder of DryRun Security. This is a dev tool company that uses its first-of-kind contextual security analysis to help developers create more secure software across their entire development and deployment pipeline. He's a dynamic speaker on software engineering topics ranging from security to development practices, and has spent a lot of time at the intersection of DevOps and security communities. James is one of those people that has a bio and resume so long I couldn't possibly talk about all of it and still fit in the episode. But just so you know, James is an author. He's created many courses, he's an educator, and he's even running and managing conferences. So he has both a great grasp on technology, but also has his fingers in the dirt in the community. So without further ado, let's start talking about contextual security analysis with James Wickett.
So we met back at Developer Week Cloud in San Mateo earlier this year, and you introduced me to a brand new phrase, which it makes sense to me now, but at the time it was like, what the heck is that? Contextual security. And my takeaway from your talk was it's a more holistic way to view cybersecurity. I'm hoping you don't have to give the whole talk here, but could you just give us a quick high-level overview of what the heck you mean by contextual security?
Yeah. Thanks, Dwayne. You know, I prepared all these slides. Should I just contextual security, contextual security analysis. It's this idea that we've been really. I think it's been among us for many years now. We've kind of been thinking about it. We've already kind of felt like, man, these like tools generate a lot of like false positives, right? And we put all these gates and barriers for people. Steve Beloven, who's like kind of a godfather, patron saint of the security industry, wrote like one of the first books on like O'Reilly books on like web application firewall. I think it's O'Reilly, maybe it's a different publisher, but he has a quote saying something like, "Security's got it all wrong. Like we're protecting the wrong things, and we're making the business and productivity get worse in the process." And we know that because like the breaches haven't stopped happening, and like the business continues to get slower and slower based off all the like the gates and controls and barriers we put in place. And so I think it helps to cement in our mind like security has always been a function of control. And that makes sense. Like when we look in the physical world, that's how we think about security as a control function there. But when we think about security as context, like adding in contextual clues to like what's going on in our system, and like we're able to highlight those, bring those forward, show people what's going on security wise. Well, then we're able to start build this picture of contextual security analysis. We're able to take these different pieces of security data, put it together, and kind of like you mentioned, like holistically look at it, right? We're not adding gates and barriers to developers, but we're actually kind of think of it as annotation, tagging, like we're seeing more as code moves through our system, as we're kind of thinking about developing software, we're able to think about all the contextual clues we're able to put in there.
Would love to dig in a little bit more about development barriers. Not to cut you off, Mac, because we had a question, but what do you mean by that? Like, how does contextual security stop from adding those gates?
Think about when a developer checks in code and they have to run some sort of like static analysis or some sort of dynamic analysis. A lot of times those tools are fraught with like false positives. Developers get, tens, hundreds of output given to them. That output doesn't really have a lot of context in it, right? It sometimes will say like, hey, there's a problem in this section. We think you have some sort of injection, some sort of OWASP top 10 type rule thing, or some challenge to the code. But it's never exactly clear, like, what do I do? Is this a real bug? Do I need to fix this? They're not able to ask that level of question, right? And sometimes it's like, oh, I included a dependency inside of my code. Now it's believed that because of that, like, this is no longer a trusted bit of code. You may or may not be using those functions in the dependency that are actually vulnerable. Who knows, right? So we start adding like a barrier, right? And so but that is a time barrier for a developer. Like, that tool to run takes in number of minutes, sometimes hours for some of these things, right? It also has a barrier for like understanding like the output of it, whether it's either riddled with false positives, maybe there is a true positive in there. We won't even cover like false negatives, and so we don't. So the developer is like, I don't know if this is okay. Like, am I okay? Like, that question just is still kind of stuck there. Then there's the security matrix of risk that we like to do. Well, if you have 5 mediums and no highs, then you're good to push. But if you have 1 high and 3 mediums and 2 lows, it's like no one knows, right? And so so you end up just like, people play this like game of whack-a-mole of like, oh well, hey, like stop it. If you have a high or something like that, everybody has their own way to sort of deal and triage with that. Now, because security has also figured out that like continuous delivery pipelines are a thing and CI is a thing, like more and more tools kind of get stacked in there, right? So, GitGuardian, DryRun Security, we kind of get laid in there, right? Now, maybe our tools run really fast and like we are kind of giving that context as people are coming in. Other tools don't run so fast, right? I saw a talk from an unnamed vendor who's like a DAST scanner. It's like, most of our scans run in less than 5 hours. You're like, that is horrible. Like, no one can use that, right? That's not something that really speaks to a developer, right? You're like Steve Beloven said, you're slowing down productivity, right? And I talked to developers when we were starting the company. We were trying to sort out like, what's the state of things? Like, my co-founder came out of Git, running security, or GitHub. So he's running security over at GitHub. I came from signal sciences and kind of a background in application security. And we talked to developers. We're like, yeah, there's like sometimes 12, 15 tools inside of the pipeline that are security tools. And so it slows everything down. And now, what are they doing? They're batching their changes, right? They're saying like, well, I don't want to just submit one change. I'm going to compile a bunch of stuff together. And if anything that we've learned in the DevOps movement, and I'm sorry, I'm long-winded on this, but in the DevOps movement, it's taught us like batching changes is a really bad thing. Like, and we've tried to like get away from that for all these years. And here we are, security is kind of like making us revert to this process where developers are no longer interested in like checking in small, frequent code changes into their CI/CD system. But now they're thinking of like, well, how do I batch this and like kind of limit the kind of the blast, from all these security tools? Like, I'm going to take the hit. I might as well, publish a week's worth at once, right? And then if I'm going to have to go through these pages and pages of false positives and deals with all these tools and just trying to get my code out the door. So, sorry, there's a lot in there, and I know that I went too long. So. Yeah.
No, not at all. That's great, and I really understand it. The whole point of the CI/CD pipeline was that we could deploy frequently and to deploy often, deploy fast. Like, that was the point, right? That we could make all these small incremental changes and go through, and we could stop doing this. And now we've jammed so much bloat into our CI/CD pipelines. I guess when it comes to these false positives and heavy security tools with a lot of especially you mentioned DAST, so when they're kind of compiling the application and attacking it, these things all take time. And we've all of a sudden now we've done the opposite. We've gone back to doing these long deployments and not. So I get the whole thing has really flipped on its head. One thing that I want to dive in here just a little bit more on the contextual security is that terms that perhaps people are more familiar with, and you've kind of touched on it, would be like control-based security, and you were kind of talking about that with with the different tools of if you have this many medium and this many critical and this that, and then it also kind of composition-based security. But I'm curious, why do teams kind of naturally go towards this? Why are we having why are we having to have the conversation about contextual security? Because it seems obvious, and I think all good things kind of like do seem obvious afterwards. But what is kind of the barriers of really implementing this kind of contextual security that gives us more information and more context around this?
Yeah, yeah, no, that's a great question. And I feel like we started with this whole idea of like, let's shift stuff left, right? Shift left. We're gonna move all this stuff left. And it sounds actually like really like almost like it's like such a good idea that it's a tautology, right? You're like, oh, this is, yeah, of course you would do that earlier. That makes sense. We do it, right? So we started doing that, and it's not really the fault of the SAST or DAST tools, but because those are tools built for like a previous era, previous way of doing software development, previous consumer, being a security person instead of a developer. So it's not really, it's just a mismatch. Like we've shifted left the tooling without like kind of reworking it. So it's like fit for that approach and that pipeline. We think about it in another way for like contextual security analysis. So my co-founder, Ken Johnson, he's over at GitHub, runs the code review team over there, right? And every day, 1,000 pull requests coming across the wire, right? It's like, oh, well, how do you know if you're a small team, looking at 1,000 pull requests, like what do you look at? What do you care about? Well, you start asking yourself, how would I find kind of the needle in the haystack here? How do I like look at the context across all these changes and then figure out which ones are the ones that we want to analyze deeper? Maybe we do want to do deeper, like a DAST scan on or something like that. And so we found that it breaks up into five key areas, and it's the surface, the language, the intent, the detection, and the environment. So surface, like added a bunch of routes or changing, sensitive functions or using it in a different way we're doing auth. Language and framework stuff. Like you see some of this with the dependency pieces that are already out there, right? Like, but there's certain, like if you're using a certain type of templating language or a certain database, that like changes what kind of attacks that are like that could even be available to you. Intent is like around the person, like the changes that they're making. Like, is that person making changes that where they've like done stuff in this repo before? Are they submitting changes to a bunch of repos at the same time? That's kind of weird, right? Have they done security training? That kind of stuff. Are they on the approved list to like edit certain parts of the app that are a little more sensitive than others? Think like auth patterns and stuff like that. Detections are kind of the stuff that we're seeing pop up in a lot of ways right now. Like, so kind of like how Git Guardian is looking through there, trying to find secrets and kind of figuring all that stuff out, right? Like that's annotating like code commits as they're coming through. We think of DryRun Security doing a similar thing. Like we're checking for all those pieces and we're able to annotate the changes. And you're seeing like the move to more like GitHub apps where like that's happening. And then environment, like, what's the README? What's the package? How does this thing actually built out? And understanding the application and its context across the organization and its purpose. So anyway, so we kind of look across the board for changes as they're coming through and pull requests as they're coming in. And then that's where we're able to kind of highlight like, oh, like that one stands out for us. And that is the context we care about.
So this all seems like it's parallel or maybe overlapping a little bit with another term I hear out there quite a bit these days: security posture and security posture management.
Yeah.
What's the acronym? CSPM space or ASPM space, application security posture management. So how is this different? Like, is this just another name for it? How would you define contextual security versus security posture?
Yeah, when I think of contextual security, I'm thinking at the discrete layer of like a pull request as it's coming in. I think ASPM and really CSPM tools, like they're kind of knitting together like all the infrastructure and the other components that go along with that, from like your nightly scans to your to changes in your cloud to changes in like the overall like your IAM role and stuff like that. For when we're thinking of contextual security analysis, we're thinking that mostly as the consumer of not a security team, but a developer. Like, how does a developer get some sort of contextual security information about the change they just made to the system?
This is really interesting, and we've talked a lot about this from contextual point of views and how this works. But I'm curious as to know what this actually means in practice. So in DryRun Security, how you actually implement this, in the real world in organizations. What does this actually look like? And I guess in a way, like what exactly are you working on at DryRun Security?
Yeah, right on. We're right now we're in private beta, so we're still kind of just onboarding customers. We're kind of in this early stage, and we hope to have public beta out, as soon as we can get that the value to folks. But if people are interested, definitely reach out to me. Would love to put you on the list and get you signed up for that. As we think of everything, Mac, around the pull request is kind of our main piece of work. And so when a pull request comes in, DryRun Security immediately starts looking across those 5 context factors of surface, language, intent, detections, and environment. And then we're also using generative AI and kind of our own LLM to give recommendations back to developers and do detections. All that happens right in line with the pull request as that flow happens, and we're talking seconds, not minutes or hours, right? So that feedback is able to happen, and then as adjustments are made to that pull request, we're able to kind of run again, right? Run again, until and the feedback and the consumer that we see is primarily just a developer being able to find code changes that are risky, get recommendations for how to fix those, and get those fixes put in place. We feel that's kind of where the rubber meets the road in security, when you can actually meet developers' needs, and not just trying to play like a security theater with getting compliance or something like that. I mean, Kit Guardian, you guys are a perfect example of this. You have the same value propositions. Oh, I checked in some secrets. Shouldn't have done that, right? We want to know that too, just for some other categories, right? I added a bunch of new routes. I added some vulnerable code in this area. I'm making changes to sensitive areas of my site. I'm doing auth in an unstandard way. There's a lot of questions that we can start asking, and remediation that we can deliver right then, right?
And that all sounds great. It sounds easy, right? The reality is that achieving that is very difficult. I want to know, how did you guys come up with what was the moment that you wanted to launch the company, that you decided that this was a big enough of a problem to really go into it? You and your co-founders have impressive resumes from where you've come from. So I'm curious, what was the moment where you really decided, let's tackle this? Because let's be real, it's a really, you're making it sound easy, but we all know this is actually a really hard challenge to do in practice and take these on.
Yeah, no, this has been a real fun challenge for us. So, having come out of Signal Sciences, I saw we made web application firewalls cool again. We said, hey, this old tech, it could actually be useful and could be really, really fast, and it could meet the need of developers and operations and security. I actually called up Ken and I said, hey, Ken, you over at GitHub, you guys should be customer 0 for this, right? We should have this going. And we've known each other for a decade. And at first he thought, well, this sounds a little crazy. And then we're like, this is really the future of where it needs to go. Because we've kept developers in the dark for too long. We kind of have built tools for the security tribe and security group, but really haven't crossed the chasm over to developer space. I'd say, notable exceptions, right? I'd say y'all are a notable exception. I think Sneak has done a really good job kind of get dependencies fixed for developers. Developers are really scared of dependencies, so it makes a lot of sense. Developers are really scared of leaking secrets and keys. Makes a lot of sense. We see this as another step on that journey. We're able to help developers, meet their security compliance and goals and problems, but not in a way that's they're going to find out about it for a long time from now, in a scan on some sort of compliance cadence, and we're not going to take a long time and just really block their build or whatever. It's going to be something that's happening as close to code check-in as we possibly can. So we felt the industry needed it. We felt the practices that Ken was doing over at GitHub. And I've kind of been interested in this space for a long time. I built this open source tool called Gauntlet many years ago, which kind of was like a behavior-driven development for security type tool. So we've cared about this space for a while. We just feel like really now's the time. A lot of the tools.
I'm briefly interrupting this episode to talk about the Security Repo's sponsor, GitGuardian. GitGuardian is a code security platform that specializes in detecting secrets in your development workflows and also in your code repositories. Not only can GitGuardian bring to the surface all of those leaked secrets from way back in the history in your projects, but it can also let you know when systems have been breached by using their brand new Honey Token module. Honey Tokens are fake credentials that you can put in your environments and also in your third-party tools to know when they've been compromised. GitGuardian is free for all teams with less than 25 developers. You can sign up today at gitguardian.com. All right, back to the episode. I was just curious, where did the name come from? DryRun Security. Whilst we're talking about it, I always like to know where the names come from.
Yeah. Well, I mean, security, like developers love to kind of dry run mode for everything you can, right? So like I dry run my infrastructure to see like how it's going to get built up. I dry run the application to see how it's going to work. We feel like security, like you should be able to dry run all your security tests, and it should be fast and immediate feedback. Like dry runs are like great because they're like almost as fast as like unit testing or like local development, right? So they really prioritize on speed, really prioritize on. I wanted a name that like was also going to have developers feel like it's a tool for them. It's not like, I don't know. I'll pick a name out of it, but you know how like most security companies are kind of named for like security, themes. But I won't name any, so I don't accidentally offend anybody on that. But we wanted something that developers knew was for them, right? This is a developer tool built for developers. It just so happens to be finding like security problems along the way, but we want it to be an enjoyable, good experience for developers. Yeah. I mean, maybe scared is like too strong a word there, but like we care about like leaking secrets. We care about using other people's code, and I'd say we even care about like other people's code inside of our application. Like let's say I add a dependency, and like now I have 37 new kind of hidden routes inside of an application. Like new surface has been added, and I didn't maybe sign up for all that because I just wanted a quick way to like transport JSON to something else, right? It's like, I don't know, like, you pick up libraries to do one thing, and then sometimes they have completely different, impact on your code base. And you want to know that as a developer.
Yeah. It's like the event stream situation where event stream was a really popular package, stopped being maintained. Someone else took over to maintain it. They introduced a dependency called flatmap stream,
Mm-hmm.
and then flatmap stream was actually turned malicious, which turned event stream malicious. It's kind of like, like it is like, this is so far downstream and so out of like event stream was like a fairly simple dependency that, like.
Are you saying it's turtles all the way down?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I do love that saying.
Yeah.
Speaking of other tech all the way down, you brought it up briefly earlier, but it's 2023. We can't really have a conversation without mentioning LLM and AI. So we'd love to hear a little bit more about how you're leveraging that. And then in the larger sense, is AI literally going to replace all of our SaaS tools and hard coding rules? Is that the future that we're headed toward?
I think so. Yeah, I think we're seeing that future already now. We're seeing a lot of great experiments on the things we're working on for that. We we have we kind of position ourselves for DryRun Security as an automated security buddy that you get on your next pull request, and with that buddy, like that buddy finds risky code changes as they're happening. So we can prevent, fix, merge, get them triaged. We also have it so like the security buddy can like answer questions. So like when we do have a finding that's maybe a little bit more confusing for somebody, you could say, why is that important? How could I fix it? Right. And so we're experimenting with our LLM on that. So yeah, I do see that we're able to get a lot faster results. And are we parsing the whole AST tree and doing all this stuff that SaaS tools have done in the past? No, but can we be like 80-90% as effective? Maybe. I don't have enough data to say for sure on that, but I would say things are trending towards that.
Currently see the limit? Where is it still faster, better, not easier, but faster, and you're gonna get better results from relying on an old-fashioned hard-coded rule set than trying to train a model? Like where's the ROI drop off currently?
Yeah. I think we're still trying to figure that out right now. Like everybody is experimenting with this. So I don't know. I don't have. I wish I could be like, hey, yeah, Dwayne, here's the map of that and the model for that. Pay me up in 6 months, and maybe I'll have like some metrics on that, and I can kind of show you where we are on that.
I think that's where everyone is right now, of trying to figure out where are we in the hype cycle. That's how I keep thinking of it. Like, will 6 months from now see you ripping all of the LLM out? I doubt it. Will that be a cottage industry that some people are like, well, we're not really an AI first company after all. I think this is one of those areas though where it makes a lot of sense, because sitting down and writing the rules for this just seems like an overwhelming time consuming mess. Like you'd have to have a full-time team member that just focused on like, I'm going to be a contextual security rule writer versus, hey, there's LLM, just figure it out.
I think that there will be kind of that. I think we're already seeing some of the market move away from AI stuff and the hype growth. I mean, you see like usage is even kind of on a little bit of a lull right now. But we are seeing incredible results in our experiments on this around all the stuff, and we're kind of rolling these out piece by piece to our private beta users. So I'm feeling really optimistic about like ability to detect, ability to find, and do so for a lot of languages and frameworks. And I mean, like even if we were to parse out like the top SAST type scanner, right? Like they cover different languages to different effectiveness, right? There's not parity between, I don't know, just pick Java and Go, right? What about COBOL, right? I mean, it's like you can just go back to like, well, there's all the weird stuff, right? And weird frameworks that people use, and not all of them have complete coverage for. So we're already in kind of a degraded detection space already, unless you're like pure 100% Java. So is an AI based or like a LLM here where we can like model this out and train it in enough ways to, even though it may not be like perfect to like what we could do with the other previous generation. We're seeing, like I said, we're seeing great results on it so far, but it's still early for us and still early for our customers. So,
yeah. That's super interesting. It's funny you just mentioned COBOL there. I like telling the story. I had a friend at university, and we were all like looking into the latest technology. That back then it was kind of React had just started, and we were all like, oh, React's gonna be it. And then we asked him, what are you gonna do? And he goes, oh, I'm specializing in COBOL. And we all thought he was absolutely mad. And he goes, all the financial institution servers, they all run on COBOL, and there's no one left to maintain it. So I'm just going to make a bucket load of money, and that's what he does. And he's always on holiday. So he's there's some money to be made out there if you want to be with the weird and wonderful and old stuff.
I did not come on this podcast thinking I was going to even say the word COBOL, so you got me there. But there it is.
We like to keep our guests, surprised.
Somehow
and
that
thinking.
makes me feel better. We got to the moon and back with COBOL. Like if my bank started rewriting everything in JavaScript, I think I'd change banks.
Well, yeah, I don't know.
That's fair.
Eventually,
That's fair.
Eventually, they're going to have to. Eventually, they're going to have to make a move. I would hate to see what the
I hope
security
not for your
vulnerabilities are.
friends.
Yeah. Well, I think it'd be fine. Oh yeah.
Well, I think in the terms of like resilience engineering, like those systems have a lot of survivability, and like they've proven themselves resilient over time, right? It's like, yeah, if it was JavaScript, we'd all be like, that's not a good idea, right? Although JavaScript, TypeScript has definitely stood the test of time too, right? And so some of these new frameworks, of course, but they seem to come and go. But yeah, I don't know. I'd be curious to see how the industry changes on that. So
yeah, definitely. And you know what's going to be interesting?
COBOL to AI. Here we are.
Yeah. We like to cover the whole spectrum here at the Security Repo.
There you go.
Yeah. Well, look, we're coming to the end of the show, and I just want to invite you at the moment. If people are interested in DryRun Security, getting their automated buddy to help them, how can they find out more and potentially maybe even I don't know if you have an open beta or a closed beta at the moment, but how could people kind of follow the journey and find out more about DryRun Security?
Cool. Yeah. If you go to DryRun.security, that's what we have a sign up form there. You can sign up. It is right now currently a closed beta. We hope to be opening that up in the near future. There's a few questions on that form, like do you use GitHub and what languages do you write in, and just a couple things to kind of ingest on our side, and then we'll prioritize that. You can always email us at beta@dryrun.security and try to be like, hey, I want earlier access, and I'll see what I can do to try to do that, because friends of the show, friends of mine.
Awesome. Dwaybne, do you have any final questions or words before we click the big red button here?
Just want to shout out again. It was an amazing talk you gave back at that conference. So you guys are also doing other conferences. I know you'll be at GERCon, or not GERCon. Sorry. I know you'll be at other conferences soon, such as the Texas Security Summit. Or, take that all over again. Hey, I know you're awesome at speaking, James, because that's how I met you, speaking back at CloudX, and you're going to be at other events soon, like Texas Cyber Summit, where I'll be as well. I don't know if this episode definitely won't premiere before we actually are out there later this week. But do you have any big other conferences in the far future where people might be able to catch you?
Well, I think the very next week I'm at the DevOps Enterprise Summit speaking about context over control. So that'll be a fun one. And then both Ken and I will be out at OWASP AppSec USA out in DC. And we'll even have a booth there, and come pick up some DryRun Security swag and come say hi to us.
Awesome. And I'll put the links to those events in the show notes, along with the links to DryRun Security. So anyone that's listening that wants to find out more, you'll find the links there below. So with that, I want to thank you, James, so much for coming on the show. It was really interesting. I've learned a lot, and I can't wait to investigate a little bit further, hopefully in the future with DryRun Security.
Hey.